let me begin by reading a few utterances of Swami Vivekananda. Ye divinities on earth, sinner, it is a sin to call a man sinner. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. You are souls immortal, spirits free, blessed and eternal. Ye are not matter, ye are not bodies. Matter is your servant, not you the servant of matter. The history of the world is the history of a few men who had faith in themselves. That faith calls out the divinity within them. You can do anything. You fail only when you do not strive sufficiently to manifest the infinite power which is within you. As soon as a man or a nation loses faith in himself or itself, death comes. Believe first in yourself and then in God. The voice of Asia has been the voice of religion. The voice of Europe is the voice of politics. I do not mean to say that political or social improvements are not necessary. But what I mean is this, that they are secondary here and that religion is primary. Where should you go to seek for God? Are not all the poor, the miserable, the weak gods? Why not worship them first? Why do you go to dig a well on the source of the Ganges? Let these people be your God. Think of them, work for them, pray for them incessantly. The Lord will show you the way. The ultimate goal of all mankind, the aim and end of all religions is but one, the union with God, or what amounts to the same, with the divinity which is every man's true nature. The subject of our talk this morning is Swami Vivekananda, who brought Vedanta to the West. In the year 1893, an important meeting, Parliament of Religion, was held in the city of Chicago. That event has been, to all practical purposes, forgotten here. But from one standpoint, it is a very, very important meeting. It is an important event from the history of the religions of the world, or also from the history of thought movements. Because in this meeting came one from India, a Hindu monk, who for the first time, I believe, came out of India. It was perhaps the first Hindu monk in the history of India who came to the West. Buddhist monks perhaps came to Palestine, came to Alexandria, they crossed the Himalayas to go to China, they went to Burma, they went to Indonesia, Far Eastern countries. Perhaps some Hindu monks also had gone there to spread the Indian culture. But we do not find any accurate record that any Hindu monk came out of India with the message of Hinduism. And in the last part of the century, towards the close of the last century, orthodoxy was so rigid, even ordinary persons would not dare come out of his country because he would be ostracized. And in such circumstances, a monk, altogether unaware of the worldly conditions, came to this country. This country, America, which was a rising nation, not at that time the leading nation as now. It was a rising nation, vibrant with new life, open to new thoughts, worshipping the gospel of freedom of thought. And you see here the old world and the new world met. It is surprising. Swami Vivekananda gave his first message to America, not to Europe. Circumstances made the thing such that he came to America and gave his first message in America. The new world and the old world met. And its impact will be understood by future historians. The Parliament of Religion was organized so that representatives of different religions might come and give their views. Swami Vivekananda came uninvited, but when he came, he had the opportunity to attend that meeting. But when he spoke, he made history, as it were. What did he say? He said, whereas each representative of each religion spoke for his own religion, Swami Vivekananda spoke for all religions, or for the eternal religion. He said, all religions are true. There are only so many paths to realize the same goal. Religion is one. In practice, religions are different. The eternal light is one. Lamps are many. So all religions are true. And religion does not mean simply philosophical speculation. Religion does not mean even intellectual perceptions, however clear they may be. Religion means realization. Religion means if you utter the name of God, you owe it to yourself to realize Him. Unless and until you have realized God, religion is simply a matter of discussion, a matter of ceremonial, matter of ritual. You have not reached the real teachings of religion. And if God is a God of love, as all religions say, however different they may be in non-essential things, there is no such word as sin, or there is no such word expression as a sinner. So he said, it is a sin to call a man sinner. Get rid of that idea. You are children of bliss. We all are children of immortality. That was altogether a new idea in the West, dominated by Christian religion, where you go. Start religion with the idea of original sin. That was the first assembly, Parliament of Religion. 7,000 or 8,000 persons attended that meeting. These words came as a new thought, as it were, and the effect was tremendous. At once people were astonished by the new gospel which he brought. And he carried the day. And he dominated the parliament of religion. During the sessions of the parliament of religion, afterwards, he would be the last speaker, so that the audience could be kept. Newspapers at once rang with his fame. New York Herald, I think that is one of the original proprietor of this New York Herald Tribune. In any case, at that time it was an important paper. New York Herald wrote, "How foolish it is for us to send missionaries to a country which can produce such persons." The president of the science section of the Parliament of Religion said that he was the most important figure in the Parliament of Religion. People simply hang around for his words. His pictures were posted in the streets of Chicago. People would look at it with reverence. At once, he became important. In that meeting, there were church dignitaries, you can understand, all experienced lecturers, ministers, church dignitaries, not only of America, but from all over the world. Best representatives of religion assembled there. There were veteran people, there were great scholars. Swami Vivekananda was the most dominant figure, and at that time he was only 30 years of age. Now the question is, what is the reason for that? It was the first important lecture he delivered in his life. Previously we knew that it was the first lecture, but afterwards latest researches indicate before he had attended the Parliament of Religion, he was in Boston, he gave some talk, not a regular lecture, in some parlors and so on, but it was the first important lecture he gave. And he made such a tremendous influence. One should naturally ask, what was the reason for that? He has a great personality. It is said he was a prince amongst men. Wherever he would go, he would command respect. As a monk, as a wandering monk, with a ragged cloth as it were, when he would be walking from place to place, even then would command respect. He had penetrating eyes that would bewitch people, could see here the great personality. He had orange color robes, different from ordinary robes, which would attract attention here. But were these things responsible? Were these the reasons for which he could make such a great impression? However important these factors might be, that was not the most important factor. The important factor was, here is a man, though young, perhaps the youngest representative, perhaps the youngest person who spoke there. Though young, he spoke from his first experiences. He did not speak from second-hand information. He was a man of God. He had seen God face to face. He had the highest religious experience. It was perhaps why perhaps is almost true. All in that august assembly, it was for the first time they saw a person who could speak of God from his direct experience. Naturally, the effect was tremendous. If there is a man of God, no one can resist him. Scholars, orators, distinguished personalities sink into insignificance. And about religion, when he talks from his direct experience, naturally, nobody could resist him. The question of resistance does not come. People could see that he could not remain hidden. We don't have to require a candle light to see the sun. He was a person who spoke from his own illumination. So he could say, it is a sin to call a man sinner. He realized in his own experience that each man is divinity itself. He could see with clear eyes. And when he said these things, challenging the traditional view that we are inheritor of original sin, even they could not resist him. That was the real reason. Now, what was the background of this young monk who came and who talked? Swami Vivekananda had a dramatic career, as it were, all along. You see, he had such a dramatic setting. He did not come from invitation, he came. And by chance he could get into that meeting. And he carried the day. In his life we find many dramatic elements, it is strange. He was born of a very rich, cultured, aristocratic family. In his early days, he had some religious feeling because his mother was very pious. His father also had religious interest. He was educated in a Christian missionary college. When he got the English education, he began to think for himself. He became an implacable rationalist. He was thinking, all people talk of God, but can God be realized in life practically? Or God is simply a mere word? And he was a great scholar, not only scholar, more than that. Even at that time he was a great thinker. He had correspondence with some important philosophers of England at that time. He was a great thinker. Scholarship is a matter of memory. Original thinker is a different thing. And he was a very combative personality. It is said in one of these frenzied moods, I say frenzied because it began to weigh on him whether God can be realized as a fact. It disturbed him. And he would go to this and that person asking, have you seen God directly? It is said he came into contact with Devendranath Tagore, father of the famous poet Rabindranath Tagore. Devendranath Tagore was a saintly character. He once went to him and point blank asked that question. Devendranath Tagore was a very famous man. And this young boy asking that question point blank to him. Tagore did not answer him directly. He said, "You have the eyes of a yogi." And in that frenzied mood, when in that disturbed condition of mind, he came into contact with Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna was just his opposite. Ramakrishna was born in a very poor Orthodox Brahmin family, in a very remote village. Had he not been born there, the world in centuries to come would not know the name of that village. He had no book learning. He was innocent of all book learning. His mind was not sophisticated by education. He was a temple priest, 6 miles from Calcutta, which was the haunt of Western civilization at that time. It's a haunt of Western civilization because almost every English educated man would be estranged from the culture and tradition of India. They would pride themselves about criticizing Hinduism and so on, idolatry and so on. Ramakrishna was just worshipping the image of Kali, whom he would call Divine Mother. And one thing interesting, Swami Vivekananda heard about Ramakrishna from one of his professors. He was studying in a Christian missionary college, I said. That professor, while teaching Wordsworth, said, Wordsworth would have ecstasy when he would say that the corporeal breath is stopped and body becomes a living corpse, as it were. When explaining these things, and students could not understand what it was, the professor said, you go to Dakshineshwar, you will find a person who has that experience. And Swami Vivekananda came to see Ramakrishna, who was a temple priest. And Swami Vivekananda asked him that question directly, have you seen God? And he said clearly, much more clearly than Vivekananda put his question. He said, I see God much more clearly than the material objects you see. I can show you how to get that experience. And at once Ramakrishna understood what Vivekananda was and saw his future. Vivekananda said, Ramakrishna said, I am waiting for you for so long. You have a great future. You have a divine mission to fulfill. Vivekananda, as I said, impeccable rationalist, should not believe all these things. When he returned home, Vivekananda was thinking, what this crazy man, what does he say? The divine mission I have to fulfill and so on, future. Could not believe. He thought Ramakrishna was crazy. But at the very first meeting, he was so much influenced by his personality, by his love. He went there again. At that time, Ramakrishna touched him. And Vivekananda was in an ecstatic condition. Condition when the mind soars so high that you forget your body, you forget the surroundings. And at that time, Ramakrishna studied much more accurately what was the future of Vivekananda, whether he was right. At first, through intuition, Ramakrishna saw his future was that. But it is said that at that time, by touch, when he was in an ecstatic condition, He just studied him, whether he was the soul who was to come to fulfill his mission. Vivekananda went home very much dejected. He knew that he was a very strong personality. To be in such a condition, by the touch of a person, he felt very humiliated. But as I said, it would be coming again, because he was caught in the love of Ramakrishna. And the next time also, Ramakrishna did such things. And there ensued a great struggle between the would-be teacher and the would-be student, or the would-be disciple. Ramakrishna had constantly spiritual experiences. He worshipped Divine Mother, the image of Mother Kali. He would literally talk with her. It was not an image. It was really a living deity with him. But it would be hard for Vivekananda to understand these things. To say these are the talks of a brain-sick person. He directly challenged his realizations of Ramakrishna. And for 6 years, that struggle continued. Till afterwards, Vivekananda surrendered himself completely. Rather, he saw the reality of the experiences of Ramakrishna. Afterwards, he said very touchingly that for 6 long years I had to fight. It is good that he fought for long 6 years. It is good for us. For all the arguments we could give, we try to give against God and religion. And Vivekananda, in a much more vehement degree, hurled against Ramakrishna. And he got the answer. We could not argue like him, not have we the intellectual capacity, and not so much courage. Any other person who would come to Ramakrishna would succumb immediately under his influence. But Vivekananda fought for 6 long years. It was good for posterity. If I have any misgiving about the reality of God, we can remember him, we can study him. We can see how he would be combating his would-be teacher. Then his only concern was to get the highest experience, highest spiritual experience. To test Ramakrishna for that. And Vivekananda at once was taken to be the chief disciple of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna had other monastic disciples who afterwards became great spiritual personalities, spiritual giants, but Vivekananda had the foremost place. With others, Ramakrishna just restrict this and that, but for Vivekananda there was complete freedom. For others, you prescribe this diet and that diet in order they could do spiritual practices more earnestly. But for Vivekananda, there was no restriction. Ramakrishna would say he is a roaring fire. He will burn everything to ashes, anything. Nothing can disturb him. He has complete freedom. And once Vivekananda had the highest experience. In that experience, just he forgot the idea of his body and mind. Because for the time being he became unconscious, as it were. His body became a living corpse, as Wordsworth said poetically. It became actually so. And Vivekananda remained in that condition for some time. And when he came down to the normal plane, sense plane, at first he began to say, where is my body? Where are my hands? and others got alarmed. Others thought that you are simply meditating, and then meditation has become deep. But when you said these things, others got alarmed. They went to Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna simply said, all right. He has pestered me long enough for that, to get the highest experience. And afterwards, when Vivekananda came to Ramakrishna, he was glad. And he said, this realization which you had is the highest. But it will be kept under lock and key by the Divine Mother. You will have to work for her to fulfill the divine mission. When that work is finished, then you will get it back, that highest spiritual realization. That is the key. That is the clue by which we can understand why Vivekananda had so struggled afterwards. We could see there are two elements in him. He wanted to be absorbed in the highest spiritual experience. He directly said to Ramakrishna, I want to remain absorbed in that highest spiritual experience which I had. Ramakrishna said, shame on you. I thought you are born with much greater metal. You will have to shoulder the burden of spiritual burden of others. You are meant for that. And so the struggle, the conflict, we find always in his life. His mind wants to gravitate towards the depth of his being, but another force compels him to work. And the struggle became great, really. The struggle ensued after Ramakrishna had passed away. When Ramakrishna had passed away, naturally he felt a great vacuum in his heart. And like a restless being, he began to go from place to place in India. And at various places to do hard spiritual practices. He was quite restless. He knew he had some mission to fulfill. Ramakrishna said you will have a mission to fulfill. Ramakrishna put Vivekananda in charge of other monks and the lay disciples. But he did not know exactly what to do. And it was good. He wandered from one corner of India to another. He saw India in its real condition. He mixed with the poor, he mixed with the highest, with the princes and maharajas. He mixed with scholars, distinguished scholars, and he mixed with unlettered persons. And he saw how goodness can be in persons who have no book learning. He saw India, he saw the strength of India, he saw the weakness of India. Everything he saw, but he was restless, just to find out what he is meant to do. And at that time, circumstance brought him to America. And he gave his message and at once he saw light how to do his work. Or Divine Mother, as would say, just compelled him to work. In America, after that signal triumph at the Parliament of Religion, people flocked around him for getting spiritual help. Another thing, Swami Vivekananda had a very compassionate heart. While he was very young, it is said, if any beggar, any person would come, to throw away all the clothes and valuable things to the poor person who would be coming. When he would be coming to Ramakrishna, he would bring his friends to Ramakrishna. Because he had got so much benefit from Ramakrishna, he wanted his friends to get those benefits. But Ramakrishna said, you bring those persons. They are not ready for these things. But Vivekananda had a compassionate heart to bring. That's always a great compassionate heart. And he felt not only for the people of India, he felt for people in general. When he came to America, he saw and understood the condition of the whole world, as a whole. And he saw clearly the fundamental problem of human misery is not simply humanitarian work, simply to solve the problem of food or problem of education. Fundamentally, it is a spiritual problem. Otherwise, one cannot get any real peace. So Swami Vivekananda would be talking of spiritual things, of Jnana Yoga, how one can realize the highest as a spiritual experience. These things he taught in America and in Europe. But when he went back to India, he was faced with different kind of problem. There was stark poverty in India, great inertia, an old nation thinking in terms of the past capital, and in the present tense, inert lethargy, talking of high things and doing nothing. That was the problem with which Vivekananda was faced. Vivekananda himself had a great dynamic personality. He felt for India. Then so he pointed out clearly, India has become, as you would say, a sleeping Leviathan, a great monster which is sleeping. And for that, he required some other message. The message how to cope with the material problems of life. How to awaken that nation which was sleeping with great possibilities though. And he gave a very good taking. But he was such a great personality. He gave, I say, about 24 lectures. And from the West, when he thought of India, he wrote something like 50 letters. And those letters were not simply words. They were simply the eruptions of a volcano. They were the tongue of flame, as it were. He spoke fire. He was original in coining new words. I have not seen such strong expression couched in letters or in literature. These are simply fiery messages, as it were. He would say, do you think there is any religion in India at present day? All your religions have gone to the kitchen. For 2000 years you are discussing whether you would eat with the right hand or left hand. You talk that each one is a Brahman, and you treat your neighbors as next door neighbor to brutes, animals. Is there any religion? Whole of India has become a lunatic asylum, as it were. Such was the type of language he used. But because he spoke from his heart, because he shed tears for India, these words had fired great effect, and the nation took up its lethargy. Swami Vivekananda said that in India most important thing is touch the soul of India, its religion. Though he spoke to people to take up lethargy, to spread education, and to struggle for the material prosperity and so on, him emphasize that idea. Take care of these things and religious life will come out. And Swami Vivekananda would say, touch the soul of India, revive the real religious spirit, and India will awaken. And India did awake, because afterwards that confidence of the nation expressed itself in politics, revolutionary movement. What Swami Vivekananda did is, he brought back the faith of the nation, confidence of the nation. Under political subjection, a vast country lost faith in its own culture. Here it said, if a man loses faith in himself, or a nation loses faith in itself, it is dead. Swami Vivekananda revived, he brought back the life of a dead nation, as it were. The nation got back its faith and confidence. He would say, if the nation has confidence, political trouble is a secondary importance. It will be thrown off very easily, and it was thrown off very easily. No war was necessary. Mahatma Gandhi's real strength was that he was a religious person. So India's independence came through religious influence, and it started with Swami Vivekananda. Some of the important political leaders have publicly acknowledged that the movement started from Dakshineshwar, the place where Ramakrishna had his spiritual practices. Because Ramakrishna, by his spiritual practices, showed to people how the spiritual life of India was true and sound. Religion was not dead. Religion was alive. Ramakrishna showed. And with that came the self-confidence of people in their path. Swami Vivekananda had the idea. He said, it was his conviction, if India awakens, if the religious life of India becomes again dominant, from it will flow spiritual currents which will save the world. Swami Vivekananda was a person of great vision. Spiritual, not only he had great perception of historical truth, he was a great scholar in history too, but he had this spiritual vision. His idea was that if India awakens, from India will flow the spiritual current, and that will give peace to the world. What was his message, real message? His message was, as he wrote to one of his English disciples, he said, in a few words, my ideal, to preach unto mankind their divinity, and how to translate that in everyday action. To preach unto mankind their divinity. But the religions of the world, he said, have become lifeless mockery. The world is in need of those whose life is eternal love, burning love and selfless. With such love, one word will tell like thunderbolt. He said, arise, awake, great soul. The world is burning with misery. Can you sleep? I simply say, awake, awake. Let us call the gods within each soul to awake, until the God within them answers the call. I myself do not make plans. Plans will come as I go. I simply say, awake, slumbering soul. Just see, he goes to the fundamental problem of life. Awake, bring out your hidden divinity. Bring out your spiritual consciousness. You need not make any plan. That is the important thing. The burden of his message was, man is divine. That divinity must come out. Help them to bring, to manifest that divinity. And he said, I say, call, awake and awake. He could do that. His words had so much strength. He would not go into the details. He would simply, his realizations were such, by simply appealing to the divine consciousness of person, that would come out, would not find the details of spiritual life in his lectures. It is simply a universal appeal to assert one's divine inheritance. But with that highest experience, spiritual experience, as I said, Swami Vivekananda had a compassionate heart. Not only had his highest spiritual experiences, he was literally burning with misery that people are in ignorance. The whole problem of human misery is ignorance, spiritual ignorance. He said, I am ready to be born again and again, so that I may worship the only God that exists, the only God that I believe in, the God who is the sum total of all human beings, and above all, my God the poor, my God the miserable, my God the wicked, of all races and of all countries. He was literally burning with misery, as it were. With respect to India, he had one problem, but with respect to the whole world, he had different problems. That in their spiritual consciousness. You see, as a man of God does not belong to one country. He becomes at once the citizen of the world. He was burning with misery for the sufferings of the world. With regard to West, he said, even towards the end of the last century, the whole of European civilization, that means Western civilization, rests on a volcano which may burst at any moment and destroy the whole world. How literally he was true, and he said these things towards the close of the last century. A sensitive heart, a compassionate man, will surely feel for this state of things. So you say that I am ready to be born again and again, so that I can worship the only gods I know, the poor, the miserable, and the wicked too. Yesterday I was reading the reminiscence of Swami Vivekananda by one of his disciples. Swami Vivekananda said, yes, at a period I would do tremendous spiritual practices. Sometimes I think that I starve myself to death because I have not realized the highest. But nowadays that thought does not bother me. I am not going to seek my salvation so long there is a single soul who is in bondage. Literally, the attitude of Buddha, it is said, a Bodhisattva, when he gets the highest experience, when the highest spiritual experience is within his reach, he comes down for the sake of humanity, for the sake of suffering humanity. But Swami Vivekananda so quietly, in his casual conversation, told his disciples, there is a time when I dead answers for that, but now it does not bother me. I am not going to have my own salvation unless and until everyone has his salvation. And he said, it might be necessary for me to give up this body, but still I shall work. I shall not cease to work until all have their salvation. So highest spiritual experience combined with his compassionate, soft heart. That was Swami Vivekananda. He died while he was still young, at the age of 39. Some say that he died, it is a pity he died so young. Did he die earlier than that was necessary for fulfilling his message? One should not say so. He left his message. He gave his message to the world. It is for others to work it out. Or he put the strength into his message, and this message is working. And so his message is spreading. It is spreading not only in India, outside India, but the power which was ingrained in the message he gave. The message is working. He did not die a day too soon. It was for him to give that message. When there is a spiritual message, it works itself, because there is so much power in it. For us, for others who admire him, who revere him, who follow him, for others to work out the details. And as such, his message was not simply a talk. It was not simply sending a rocket to the sky to spend itself. His words were, as the Upanishad says, eso adeso, eso upadeso, etot anusasanam. These are the teachings. These are the teachings. These are the appeals, and these are the injunctions of God. These are the things which you should put into practice, and things will come out all right. Swami Vivekananda made history, but that history is perpetuating itself. And the future historian will see how the impact of one person, one great soul, can influence country, can influence the thoughts of the world. Vivekananda himself knew that. Before he passed away, one was muttering to himself, and his brother disciples heard it. He said, had there been another Vivekananda, one could understand what has been done. Others could not understand from what level he was working. We can work on 3 levels. We can work on physical plane, supplying food and clothes to the poor and the needy. We can work from intellectual plane. We can give education. But these are not sufficient to reach the goal of human life. One must work on spiritual plane. That is the hardest. So Swami Vivekananda said that had there been another Vivekananda, he would understood what is being done. And he said before he passed away, the work that I have started will go on at least 700 years. And we are completing not more than something like 50 years. But he knew how to make fun of very serious things. He knew what future was. And in fun would say, you will see, in future, people will be anxious to build a temple even over a single hair of mine. But do one thing, at least don't burn incense under my nose. He knew what was just so much confidence, and he could make fun of that. This confidence not out of egotism, the listing, it is simply telling facts. And he had a humor. He was not a killjoy saint. He was full of fun, full of vitality. And he would say, yes, don't burn incense. That people will be eager to build a temple over my single hair. But don't burn incense. Do the message, follow the message which I have given. Follow that. And that message will work for 700 years. That was Swami Vivekananda who brought Vedanta to the world.